Rome wasn't built in a day, and it never occurred in one social class. If you were born into the Roman Empire, where would you have lived? Rome was many things. Grand, sprawling, corrupt, murderous, elegant, brutal. It was also filthy. Much like New York, London, and Paris, before the 20th century, Imperial Rome had limited services and no zoning commission. The river Tiber was an open sewer. Garbage accumulated everywhere. Disease spread quickly. And there was a constant shortage of water, even after the aqueducts were constructed. If you were a Roman citizen, you might live in an apartment building. These structures could be anywhere from 2 to 8 stories high and often contained shops on the ground floor. They were almost always poorly built, overcrowded, and prone to collapse. If you were visiting Rome today, you would probably stay out of these buildings. But if you were a Roman, especially a poor one, you wouldn't have had much choice but to make your home in them. For example, Titus, a former slave who achieved freedom and modest wealth, may have chosen to buy an apartment in a tenement building in the 1st century AD. He would share his tenement with many other people, including his extended family, domestic animals, and most likely prostitutes. Every room in the tenement would have been dark, dank, and filled with garbage. Titus would have slept on a mat in the main room with everyone else in his household. There might have been an opening to the roof, but no windows. There was little privacy and little air circulation, and the stench would have been unbearable at times. You might have seen a rat or two scampering over your head as you lay trying to sleep, or perhaps an emaciated dog looking for scraps. Sometimes, a heavy bucket would fall from above, waking you up in the middle of the night. The bucket might have carried sewage, water, or small stones. They were all used for cleaning, so the contents would have been just as vile and malodorous. As a side note, in such a dark building, you would never see daylight except by going outside. For this reason, Romans didn't wear makeup or perfume. They never bathed, and their hair was shaved very short. Even the emperors did none of these things. Imagine being a Roman woman wearing a full gown and elaborate hairstyle, then having to squeeze down a dark, narrow staircase. Now add the smell of stale urine and feces to the mix. A bad day in the city. You might have encountered a street preacher ranting about the end of the world. He might have been a Christian. Christians were often viewed with suspicion and hostility by Romans. They had no official leader and refused to participate in traditional Roman religion. This made them suspicious in the eyes of the state. And some of their beliefs, like the idea of an afterlife, were frankly bizarre. Christians were frequently put to death in Rome. Emperor Nero blamed them for a devastating fire and killed hundreds. Under later emperors, Christians were persecuted throughout the empire. Despite the danger, Christianity grew rapidly in Rome. People found its message appealing. And unlike the official religion, which was mostly a set of empty rituals, Christianity offered hope and salvation, a new way of life, a chance at peace. If you were a Christian, you would have gathered secretly in the catacombs. These underground burial grounds were a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers where Christians could hide from Roman authorities. In the catacombs, you would have attended Mass and worshipped in secret. After the service, you would have gone back out into the world, evading the eyes of Roman officials. In the catacombs, you might have seen artwork depicting Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and various saints. You would have marveled at the paintings, the only beauty in a dark, dirty city. Then you would have turned back toward the entrance and emerged blinking into the sunshine. Back in the city, you would have had to be careful. Roman officials were often suspicious of Christians. If you were a Roman woman, you would have walked carefully down the street. Men could openly catcall and grope you. If you resisted, you might be taken to a brothel against your will. There you would have become a sex slave, forced to please the desires of wealthy Roman men until you died. Fortunately, there were places where women could find safety. Taverns run by women. Taverns were usually small rooms attached to a house. They were places where people could relax and drink without being harassed by Roman officials. In a tavern, you could have sat down next to a group of soldiers drinking wine and complaining about their emperor. You could have talked to a gladiator between battles, heard a traveling merchant's tales from faraway lands, or sat next to a prostitute waiting for her next customer. In a good tavern, the wine flowed freely and conversation was lively. There would be plenty of noise, boisterous, laughter, shouting, fighting, and maybe a bit of music. To get drunk in a Roman tavern was a rite of passage. You would have seen men become loud and angry, slap each other and stumble around on unsteady legs. Some would pass out and have to be carried home. Others would be sick and have to crawl under the table. A few would simply fall asleep where they sat, snoring softly into their tankards. Life in Rome was dangerous. There were diseases, wars, fires, earthquakes, floods, famines, gladiators and wild animals roaming around. That's why fortune tellers and soothsayers were so popular. At a cheap fortune teller's den, you could have entered for a small fee and asked about your future. The fortune teller might have looked into a crystal ball or studied the lines on your palm. She might have told you good things or bad, but either way, you would go away believing that she had spoken with the gods and knew your fate. In fact, she knew nothing. Fortune-tellers and soothsayers were con artists who preyed on people's fears and hopes. They gave vague predictions that could apply to anyone and charged money for the privilege. The worst thing about fortune-telling in Rome was that you couldn't complain about being ripped off. It was considered bad luck to talk about such things. You had to keep it in the family. So if you lost everything because of a false prediction, you just had to accept it and move on. In Imperial Rome, you could watch the famous gladiators battle to the death in the Colosseum. Gladiators were usually slaves or prisoners of war. They were forced to fight to the death for the amusement of the crowd. The fights were brutal and bloody. Spectators bet on which gladiator would win, and when the losers fell, they were often finished off by a merciful strike from the emperor. If you wanted to be a gladiator, you would have been given special training. You would learn how to use different weapons and fight different opponents. You would practice in an arena and be judged by experienced fighters and trainers. You would need to be strong and agile. Your body would be covered in scars from your fights. If you survived long enough, you could earn your freedom and become a celebrity in Rome. Rome was a city of extremes. There was incredible wealth and unimaginable poverty. There were times of great prosperity and terrible disaster. There was good food and bad water, magnificent monuments and overflowing sewers. In this city of extremes, you might have been an emperor or a slave, a gladiator or a spectator, a soldier or a civilian, a Christian or a pagan. You might have strolled through the Forum or watched a chariot race. You might have visited the Colosseum or the Pantheon. You might have stood in line to receive free grain or watched the emperor throw gold coins to the crowd. You might have seen an execution or rescued a drowning child. You might have sat in an audience and listened to a famous philosopher speak. You might have walked the streets alone or traveled with a large group. You might have loved Rome or hated it. You might have been born there or died there. You might have visited once or lived your whole life there. You might have been a tourist or called it home. No matter who you were, you would have felt the pulse of the greatest city in the world beating around you. In the bustling marketplace, along the Appian Way, at the foot of the Palatine Hill, you would have been part of the endless procession of humanity that made Rome what it was. This is a history of everyday life in ancient Rome. It is late afternoon in ancient Rome. The Forum is a sea of heads, all jostling for position. Here, among the nobles and senators, everyone knows their place. But deeper in the city, in the labyrinth of narrow streets, thousands more Romans have plans of their own. They work, they trade, they dream of something better. Across the city, an old woman pushes her way through the crowd. She walks slowly, pausing often to adjust the folds of her woolen shawl or pat the arm of a passerby who looks her way. Today, she is going to the Forum. Her wrinkled face crinkles into a smile. She'd beg just long enough to earn her daily bread. Then she'll catch the evening light show as the sun dips behind the Palatine Hill. She won't beg there. She's saved that spot for the young man she met last week. He pretends to be deaf and dumb. He also collects coins. She gives him her meager earnings, and he pretends to be grateful. She doesn't speak much herself, but when she hears him thanking her, she beams. What else is there to say? Their lives are almost as empty as their pockets. A tired merchant pulls his donkey cart down a narrow street. Its wheels rattle over the uneven pavement. He calls out to any passersby, "Don't be angry." His goods are cheap and cheerful. Bright-colored glass cups, gaudy bronze, mirrors, elegant perfume bottles, little bronze statues of the gods. The coins in his pocket are heavier than his purse. He dreams of retirement in the country, somewhere quiet with a view of rolling hills, or maybe a Mediterranean island, somewhere warm with a breeze off the sea. Instead, he ends up in the suburbs. One day a client buys an incense burner. The next, he's back with a slave to collect it. The merchant smiles. It's a good deal for both of them. The customer gets a beautiful object. The slave earns a few extra coins, but he's got to keep moving. He's got another appointment across town. A client waiting to pick up a wreath for a friend's birthday. In a moment, he'll disappear into the crush of traffic near the Colosseum. Another face in the crowd. Another voice crying wares. Another life lived and lost in the eternal city. The baker needs his dough, pushing the sticky mass from hand to hand. The oven is already hot, stoked by his slave, ready for today's bake. This morning, he was in the marketplace, buying grain from the Egyptian merchant, haggling over the price. He always buys more than he needs, so he can throw stale loaves to the dogs later. Those hungry eyes, those sharp barks, they remind him of his father. And then there's the boy. The baker runs a finger along his cheek, rough and dry, like sandpaper. Soon he'll send the boy to the baths. He's too big for the swaddling now. But what else could he do? The baker doesn't have money for a tutor. And besides, the boy will help him in the shop someday. That's what slaves are for, aren't they? The baker thinks about the food stalls at the gladiator games. Roasted meats, cakes, and fruit. He loves watching the fights, the roar of the crowds, the clash of steel. How exciting. How different from his life. But he's got an order for a wedding cake, 5 layers high, silver filigree, real gold leaf. He'll put his best back into it. It'll be a magnificent sight. Later, someone will pay him for it. Maybe then he can afford a new oven or a better slave. But right now, the dough is getting cold. He has to get to work. The sun waits for no man. We've been hearing about the aqueducts, the roads, the aqueducts, the laws, and the legions. These are the things the guides tell us about. Sure, we know that. But what else do we know about ancient Rome? Have you ever wondered what the average person did from one day to the next? Well, today, we're taking a field trip to the slums of ancient Rome. The Subura, that's the name of the district. It's where the poor live, the immigrants, the outsiders, the people who came to Rome looking for a better life and maybe found a worse one instead. It's noisy here, it's crowded, it smells bad, but it's vibrant, colorful, filled with music and laughter. It's where half of Rome lives. The buildings here are tall and skinny, 4, 5, 6 stories up. They lean toward each other, casting the streets in permanent shadow. In the heat of summer, that's a blessing. People eat dinner after sunset here. When the night is still warm, these buildings are called they look like apartment blocks. That isn't exactly accurate. There are no fancy apartments here. Each room is rented out to whoever has the money. Maybe a family, maybe a group of friends, maybe a single guy who works as a carpenter. The rooms are tiny, dark and dank. They're in the top stories of these buildings, reached by steep, creaking stairs. There is no elevator. Sorry, in fact, there's no plumbing, no toilet, no sink, no bathtub. Life in the insula is communal. The closest thing to a private room is the cubicle at the very top, reserved for the oldest or the most important tenant. Sometimes there's a shrine in the corner, a little altar to the household gods. Every other inch of the space is shared. Families share kitchens, bathrooms, courtyards, even beds. They share their lives, their hopes, and their dreams. Their children playing in the courtyard, the mother weaving a basket, the father polishing a sword. They share their problems, too. Illnesses, gossip, arguments. Privacy, as we understand it, does not exist here. And yet, these people are proud of their homes. They've decorated the walls with paintings, the best they can afford. They hang brightly colored cloths in the windows. Maybe they've put a flower box on the fire escape. They make the most of their space. They entertain friends, share a meal, play a game of dice. A musician strums a lyre. Everyone dances. When the party's over, the guests head out onto the street. Life in the insula spills out into the neighborhood. It's 5 a.m., and the market is already open. Vendors stack their wares outside their shops. Some sell fish. The sailors have just arrived from the coast with the day's catch. A whole circle of fishmongers surrounds the harbor, shouting prices, bargaining, trying to attract customers. A little further on, a butcher unwraps a sausage, dangling it in front of a child's eyes. In the distance, the glib sound of a flute draws you to a clothing seller. He's got all kinds of fabrics on display, wool and linen, cotton and hemp. He's a Greek immigrant, and he keeps his wares folded neatly, just like back home. Further on, a silversmith hammers a piece of metal. He's been doing this since he was 12 years old, when he was an apprentice to his father. Now he has his own shop. He specializes in repairing jewelry, mending goblets, and crafting wedding bands. As he works, he chats with his customers, asks about their families, gossips about politics. A painter sits nearby. He paints portraits for wealthy Romans. He's good, but he spends more time painting tombstones. He takes pride in his work, though mixing colors and adding fine detail to each all around you, people hurry. But it's market day, and everyone wants to get the best selection. You dodge vendors, shoppers, and chickens as you weave your way through the crowd. Suddenly, there's a crash. You turn to see a handsome young man sprawled on the ground. He holds his arm, wincing in pain. A woman screams. A child cries. The baker hurries over to help, the blood staining his white apron. Together, the townspeople lift the man up. They carry him to a nearby inn. It's a popular spot. Its tables spill out onto the sidewalk. A marble statue of a local hero stands in the center. The patrons are a mix of locals and travelers, merchants and soldiers, nobles and slaves. But when they see the injured man, they clear a table and lay him down. The baker uses his napkin to stem the bleeding while someone else goes for a bandage. Someone else runs to call the doctor. You didn't think there were doctors in ancient Rome, did you? Of course there were. He's got an office just down the street. He specializes in setting bones, patching up cuts, and treating snake bites. He arrives quickly, accompanied by 2 slaves. One carries his kit, the other carries a litter. They lay the patient on the litter and carry him to the nearest balneum. Not only does the doctor need to clean the wound, but he also needs to massage and scrape the injured man. While he heals, the baker sits down for a cup of wine. It's going to be a busy night. Thanks for coming on this field trip with us today. We hope you enjoyed this snapshot of everyday life in ancient Rome. What do you think? Would you rather live in the city or the country? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more historical tales. Rome was a city that roared. You know that. As the sun beat down on the Via Sacra, or as slaves dragged chariots across the stone streets, the sound never stopped. Street vendors, hawking fish or fruit, Merchants, touting silk or steel. Slaves, pleading for scraps of bread. Slaves, pleading for their freedom. The clatter of coins. The clank of armor. The cry of a newborn babe. The lament of a dead man's kin. If you were there, you could not escape it. And if you were not, you can still hear it today, through the pages of history. But sometimes, amid the clamor, there was silence, too. A single word spoken, perfectly timed. A sentence carefully constructed. A speech so full of meaning, it drowned out all the noise. That was Cicero, not the man. No. Cicero was a roar himself, a product of Rome, shaped by it. He loved this city, its art, its customs, its endless activity. But even he knew that greatness lay not in mere noise, but in what you said and how you said it. And no one, and we mean no one, wielded the power of words like he did. We want to tell you about that power today, about how Cicero cut rivals to ribbons with his pen, about how he made friends with his enemies, and about how, amid the rumble of the city, he created some of the most stirring moments in history. Let the narrow corridors of the insula fade behind you, and imagine yourself standing on the polished stone floor of a grand Roman villa. The light is different here, softer, filtered through thin linen curtains. The air is quieter. Cool water trickles from a central fountain. It is a world away from the shouting streets of the Suburra, and seated in the atrium, surrounded by scrolls, a man dips his stylus into ink. His posture is deliberate. His hands are thin, his brow furrowed with thought. You are in the presence of Marcus Tullius. Too many Romans, he was the voice of the Republic. A master of words sharp as any blade, precise as any law. He had risen not through noble birth, but through skill, strategy, and relentless effort. And now, in the final days of his life, Cicero sits not in triumph, but in reflection. He had been born in 106 BCE in Arpinum, a small town an hour's walk from Rome. His father was a landowning, well-to-do man, and he ensured his son received the finest education money could buy. But there was nothing in Cicero's early life that suggested the kind of greatness that awaited him. Nothing except perhaps his fierce determination. At 25, Cicero left for the Greek East, where over the next 6 years, he studied philosophy, law, and rhetoric. He learned from the best teachers and he soaked up their lessons, absorbing everything they taught him. Then he returned home and started his career as an advocate, defending clients with language that captivated both senators and citizens alike. He rose quickly, first as a quaestor, a position that gave him control of public funds, and launched his political career. Then as an aedile, responsible for organizing public games and festivals, setting the stage for his lifelong love affair with Roman culture and pageantry. Next as praetor, presiding over courts and enforcing laws, establishing his reputation as a stern but fair judge. And finally, as consul, sharing supreme power with another magistrate, laying the foundation for his enduring belief in republican institutions. His rise was remarkable. He climbed the cursus honorum, the traditional path to political office, faster than anyone in memory. The cursus honorum was typically a slow, deliberate climb, but Cicero practically sprinted it. What drove him? Was it power, wealth, or a desire to reshape Rome? All three, perhaps, but mostly, it was his insatiable thirst for achievement. Cicero wanted to show Rome and the whole world what he was capable of. He was a novus homo, a new man, a term used in ancient Rome to describe someone of humble origin who achieved prominence through their own efforts. For Cicero, being a new man wasn't just a matter of social status. It was a badge of honor, a constant reminder that he had overcome his humble beginnings to achieve greatness. And throughout his career, he took pride in being a role model for other non-aristocrats, proving that, with talent and hard work, anyone could succeed in Roman society. But Cicero didn't just excel in politics. He was a prolific writer, too, producing a vast body of work that covered everything from philosophy to poetry to rhetoric. His letters alone number more than 9, offering an intimate glimpse into his thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Through his writing, Cicero shared his knowledge, entertained his readers, and above all, influenced public opinion. In fact, it was his skill as a writer that first brought him to national prominence. During his consulship in 63 BCE, he faced a grave threat to the Republic, a conspiracy led by the ambitious Lucius Sergius Catiline aimed at seizing control of Rome and ending the Republic as they knew it. Undeterred, Cicero used his skills as an orator and writer to expose and defeat the conspiracy. In a series of powerful speeches known as the Catilinarian Oration, he denounced the conspirators and urged the Senate to take action, painting vivid pictures of their treachery and calling for swift and decisive punishment. The speeches were a masterpiece of rhetoric, a display of Cicero's immense talent and a crucial moment in his career. It seemed his star would only continue to rise, but as fate would have it, Cicero's triumph came with a cost. He ordered the execution of the conspirators without a trial, a decision that haunted him for the rest of his life and earned him powerful enemies. In 58 BCE, when his political rivals seized control of Rome, They used their power to turn the people against him, accusing him of abusing his authority during the Catiline affair and using his consulship to enrich himself. The charges were likely a mixture of truth and fabrication, but the result was the same. Cicero was forced into exile. Cicero's exile was a devastating blow. He was ripped away from everything he had worked for, from the city he loved to the people he had sworn to serve. But it was also a defining moment in his life, shaping him in ways he could never have imagined. Forced to flee, he wandered along the coast of Macedonia, finding solace in the beauty of the sea and the quiet of nature. It was there that Cicero discovered the power of solitude, the importance of self-reflection, and the strength that comes from within. He was allowed back to Rome a year later, but the city had changed. The Republic was weaker, the people more volatile, and the future uncertain. When Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, starting a civil war that would end the Republic, Cicero hesitated. He admired Caesar's brilliance and achievements, but he also feared the implications of his rise to power. Ultimately, he decided to stay in Rome, trying to navigate the treacherous waters of Caesar's regime and preserve the ideals of the Republic. But his efforts were futile. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Cicero saw a flicker of hope, believing that the Republic might be restored. But he had misjudged the ambitions of Mark Antony, one of Caesar's heirs. In a series of blistering speeches known as he accused Antony of responsibility for Caesar's death and of conspiring to seize power for himself. The attacks were brilliant and effective, turning public opinion against Antony and forcing him to flee Rome. But they also made Cicero a target, and he knew it. In 43 BCE, Octavian, Caesar's other heir, made a strategic alliance with Antony, forming a triumvirate that controlled the entire Roman world. The alliance included Lepidus, who provided the financial resources, and it ensured that Cicero's enemies had even more power than before. For Cicero, the situation was precarious. He had made powerful enemies, and the odds were stacked against him. Yet he refused to back down. In his final speech, delivered in 43 BCE, Cicero defiantly declared, "I know that the die is cast, but I cannot help saying what I think." It was a defiant statement that captured Cicero's unwavering commitment to his principles. He knew he was in danger, but he was not afraid to speak his mind. And so it was that in the twilight of his career, Cicero found himself on the run, hiding from his enemies, and desperately trying to find a way to save the Republic. Eventually, he fled to a small village near the coast where he had once found refuge during his exile. There, in the peaceful surroundings, he wrote his last letter, bidding farewell to his friends and family and reflecting on his life and his legacy. Then he waited patiently for his assassins to find him. When they arrived, Cicero greeted them calmly, offering his neck to the sword. His courage in the face of death was remarkable. He had faced danger many times before, but never had it been so personal, so final. Still, he did not flinch. So that was Cicero, a man who made the complex simple, who cut enemies to ribbons with his pen, who made friends with his enemies, who championed the underdog, who navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics for half a century, who perished defending the ideals he believed in. And if you are moved by his story, do you want to forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel where we bring you tales from the ancient world every week. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. Cicero's voice echoes through the Senate hall. Senators speak their lines. The audience leans in. All around you, faces turn toward the speakers. They're coming alive. But you must leave now. Rise and follow the usher to the exit. Through the crowds of tourists, away from the bustling city, you must be very quiet. Now listen, can you hear that? That low rumble? Do you feel it in your bones? Good. Keep going. Just a little further. Almost there? Stop. Now, let Cicero's voice fall into silence. The city fades. The Senate hall grows still, and in its place, you find yourself walking down another road, this one paved with black volcanic stone, worn smooth by centuries of feet. The air feels strangely quiet here, still, as though something lingers in the dust. The tourists are gone. The vendors have packed up. No more cameras flash. No more questions echo off the walls. This is Pompeii, not the bustling city as it once lived, but as it was left frozen in time, a place where the rhythm of life was stopped in a single day. And yet in that stillness, much remains. The wind whispers through the sunlight glints off the sea in the distance. Closer, birds call from the rooftops and rattle in the fountain basins. And everywhere, fine dust motes dance in the sunbeams. You stop, take a deep breath. Imagine yourself standing beneath the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. It is the year 79 of the Common Era. The month is August. The sun is warm, too warm, but the townspeople are used to it. They go about their day as they always have: bakers kneading dough, children chasing dogs through the forum, merchants weighing goods in bronze scales. You pass a wine shop. Inside, amphorae line the shelves. Outside, men sit on three-legged stools, drinking and laughing. Someone strums a lyre. A group of young men practice swordplay. their bronze helmets glinting. A woman walks by carrying a basket of figs. Her friend asks, "Have you been to the market today?" "No," she replies, shaking her head. "I haven't had time." "Then come with me now," her friend says, taking her elbow. "Let's buy some figs fresh from the vendor. The ones at my house are no good." Further on, a fresco advertises a gladiator school. Nearby, someone has scribbled, "Beware of dogs." Across the way, an inn beckons with the promise of shade and iced wine. You walk past, catching scraps of conversation. "Did you see that donkey braying in the middle of the street? Has Lentulus returned from Greece?" "I hope so. My villa needs painting. How can I get to the amphitheater?" By the fishmongers, turn left at the bakery, third on the right. You reach the marketplace. Stalls overflow with produce. Merchants call out prices. Customers haggle. From the stalls, you see fresh fish, loaves of bread, silver pomegranates, woven baskets, glazed pottery, even dyed papyrus. "How much are these figs?" "For 2, dear." "Name your price." 2 sold. You continue on to the forum. Public buildings surround you. You read inscriptions in the marble. You hear a judge reading a verdict. You see a magistrate giving orders. Around you, citizens gather, talking, debating, sharing news. A slave girl walks by holding a scroll. A priest carries an incense burner. A man wearing a red cap walks his dog. Children race each other. Everyone is focused on the matters of their day, unaware of what is about to happen. And then without warning comes the sound. A low, rolling thunder from the mountain. The sky darkens, not with clouds, but with ash. The wind picks up, swirling gray flakes through the air. People stop to stare at the sky, puzzled, then afraid. They clutch their children close, running for cover. But we're inside the temple of Jupiter. A priest rushes to light the sacred flame. Outside, the baker pulls his family under the counter. His oven glows red in the gloom. At the gladiator barracks, a trainer grabs his sword. He won't fight the inevitable, but he might slow it. You watch from the shadows as an old man hobbles down the stairs of his villa. He leans heavily on a cane. He, too, seeks shelter. Suddenly, the ground shudders. Rocks rain from the sky. Roofs collapse. The rich man curses, realizing his villa won't stand. The next tremor rocks, the earth harder than the last. He runs for the hills, stumbling and falling. You look up, shielding your eyes against the ash. With each rumble, the darkness deepens. Within hours, the tremors subside, but the ash continues to fall. It piles up on roofs, on streets, on people. People huddle together in the forum, burying their faces in their cloaks. Soon, they disappear from sight. From atop a ruined statue, you see only swirling ash. You think of the old man, of the baker, of the children. They're all trapped beneath the ash. Some are dead. Others cough, choking on the dust. They try to dig themselves free. They scream for help. They wait for daylight. You wake up, coughing. You sit up, blinded by ash. You shield your face and realize that night has fallen. The sky above the mountain glows red. You stumble outside, shielding your eyes. The flow of ash is steady. You wonder how long it will last. You think of the old man, of the baker, of the children. Will anyone be left after this? You watch, horrified, as a pregnant woman sinks to her knees. She struggles to claw herself free of the ash, but it's no use. You turn away, unable to bear the sight. You walk aimlessly through the deserted streets, careful not to slip on the ash. Where can you go? What can you do? Everywhere, the ash piles higher. You feel weak and sick. Why didn't you climb the hill? You think of the baker's family, of the old man, of the woman with the child. They're all dead. You feel tears prickling your eyes, but you blink them away. You cannot cry. You must keep going. You find a building. It looks strong, but the door is locked. You pound on it. No answer. You try another, and another. Always ash, always silence. Finally, you see a shadow move in the gloom. A man steps out, his clothes stained with soot. He looks at you, his face streaked with grime. "Are you all right?" he asks. "I am now," you reply. The next morning, sunlight filters through the ash. The sky is dim. People emerge from their shelters, blinking, disoriented. They find their families, their friends. They search for food. They bury the dead. They mourn. Days turn to weeks. The people of Pompeii adapt to living in the shadow of the volcano. Then one day, a new sound cuts through the air. The clang of pickaxes, the shouts of workers, the rumble of carts. People stop what they're doing. They turn to watch as outsiders arrive, digging in the ash, uncovering foundations, searching for treasures. You stand among them, watching as they unearth fragments of frescoes, weapons, jewelry, even waxen. One day, they find the baker's oven. Beside it, a pile of ash. No one says a word, but everyone understands. Some days later, the workers discover a woman buried beneath the stairs of a villa. Her hand clutches a bronze mirror. The others clear away, the ash reveal in her face. It's beautiful. Next to her, a bracelet glitters. The workers take it, but you reach for it first. You don't know why. You only know you want to touch it. As the decades pass, outsiders lose interest in Pompeii. The excavation site becomes overgrown. Trees sprout through cracks in the roads. Vines wrap around statues. Wildflowers bloom in the forum. Ruins become a ruin. You walk through the tall grass, dodging crumbling pillars. Sunlight filters through broken arches. Birds chirp in the shade. Bees buzz from flower to flower. You find the old man's cane leaning against a wall. You hold it, feeling its weight, imagining his gnarled hands gripping it. Nearby, you see a wine jug lying on its side. Next to it, a faded fresco shows a couple toasting. You pour an invisible drink. To life, you whisper. In the 18th century, explorers rediscover Pompeii. Excavations begin anew. You stand beside them, watching as they uncover mural paintings, mosaics, fountains, marble columns, but what they find most fascinating are the imprints in the ash, the voids left by the bodies buried beneath. Archaeologists fill those voids with plaster. What emerges are not statues, but postures, the outlines of people frozen in the disaster. Some are kneeling, as though praying. Others are standing, as though waiting for rescue. You run your hand over the torso of a woman. She's forever young, forever still. You don't know her name. You only know she was here. Time passes. Generations come and go, gawking at the ruins, speculating about the people who lived here. You walk beside them, you hear their voices, their laughter, their questions, but when they're gone, you're alone. The wind whispers through the ruins, rustling the leaves, making the grass bend. Birds chirp, bees buzz, cicadas drone. The sun sets, the moon rises, the stars shine cold and bright. The world is full of noise, and yet, in the stillness of Pompeii, you find an eerie silence. Not sorrowful, exactly. More like reverence. Because here, in the quiet of the ruins, you find not just evidence of death, but a testament to life. Its meals, its jokes, its routines, its fears, its shadows. And in this stillness, with only the wind whispering between the columns, it's easy to forget that nearly 2,000 years have passed. But time here moves slowly, and the city waits. Rome is a city that seems built for drama, and today, we're going to deliver just that. If you thought ancient Rome was just about to collapse, though, well, don't worry, you've got another 400 years to kill. So sit tight, grab a snack, get yourself a drink. We'll wait till you're ready. Now, leave behind the quiet ruins of Pompeii. Let the ash settle. Let the mountains sleep once more. And imagine instead the soft rustle of silk, the scent of warmed honeyed wine, the glow of 100 oil lamps dancing against walls of gold and vermilion. You are now in the company of Rome's elite. This is not the Rome of crowded tenements or communal toilets. Here, the air is perfumed, the tables are carved ivory, and every gesture is measured. But beneath the surface lies something more performative, and often perilous. You arrive at a banquet. It is early evening. A slave takes your cloak and sandals. Another offers rosewater to cleanse your hands. The host greets you with a practiced smile. Inside, the triclinium awaits the dining room. The walls are painted with scenes from myth, Icarus, Midfall, Orpheus looking back. You recline on cushioned couches, propped on your left elbow, facing a low table laden with delights. The meal begins, not with food, but with performance. A poet recites verses, carefully flattering the host. A lyre hums softly in the background. Then comes the first course: eggs, olives, dormice rolled in poppy seeds. Not because they are common, but because they are rare. Luxury, here, is a currency. To display it is to display power. And yet, even at these polished tables, the undercurrents of ambition ripple. Guests glance sideways. Who sits closest to the host? Whose goblet is refilled first? Who receives the choicest cut of peacock or the imported figs from Hispania? The host, of course, is not feeding friends. He is cultivating alliances, managing reputations, showing off the depth of his cellars and the breadth of his influence. The conversation is light, but careful. Political winds shift quickly in Rome, and a poorly chosen word might invite more than a frown. A senator who jokes too freely about the emperor could find his property seized by morning. Even laughter is a risk. You sip your wine, diluted with water, strong enough to numb, weak enough to think. A platter is brought out. Flamingo tongue, eel pito, sugared dates, stuffed with pine nuts. You take only a little. To indulge too freely is considered vulgar. To refuse is insulting. There are entertainers, now acrobats, dancers, a flute girl with golden bracelets. The mood drifts toward decadence, yet never fully lets go of tension. For here, amidst gold and glass, there are invisible knives. And if one listens closely, beneath the music and flattery, the room whispers. This senator supported the wrong faction in the last vote. That one's nephew was accused of treason. A guest leans too close to another's wife. A servant's eye lingers too long on a coin. Even in luxury, no one is safe. And then, perhaps, the host gives a toast. He raises his goblet, praises the emperor, laughs too loudly. mentions a rival's absence just long enough for it to sting. Applause follows. But some guests glance away. Others file the words in memory. Tomorrow, there may be consequences. The elite of Rome lived in a gilded world, but it was not a peaceful one. They wrote poetry by lamplight and sentenced men to exile over breakfast. They debated philosophy in one breath and ordered poison in the next. And behind every smile, a calculation. Yet, when the banquet ends and the last course is served, a honey cake shaped like a lotus, sprinkled with crushed pearls, there is a moment of strange quiet. The lamps flicker low. The wine has settled. The performers are gone. And the guests, once sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, drift asleep in darkened villas, dreaming of triumph. Or perhaps, just of surviving another season in the capital. The house grows still. The city breathes on. And in the hush of that midnight moment, all ambition fades. At least until morning. The great Roman Empire has fallen. Not to a barbarian horde, not to a legion of ghosts, but to sleep. And I, your guide, will lead you through its slumbering heart. Past silent monuments and empty palaces, to the very gates of dreamland. You who have followed me through many an ancient city, who have delved deep into the tombs of pharaohs, and stalked forgotten temples with me, know that even in my company, the paths of the dead are seldom easy, for there are things that even a living person should not see. Shadows best left undisturbed, and secrets that even daylight fears. We've come to this evening's trysting place late, so our ghostly tours must needs begin without further delay. Take my hand, if you please, and suffer not the mists of twilight to envelop you in their chilly folds. So, first we visit the Forum, the living heart of Rome, which by day bustled like a hive of bees, but now is hushed and still, save for the night, wind rustling through the crumbling archways. Once it echoed with the cries of newsboys hawking the latest scandal, the pronouncements of soothsayers predicting doom or victory, the shouts of competing gladiators practicing their deadly arts, and the murmurs of senators debating the fate of empires. But now only owls answer one another, and the ghosts of pigeons flutter through the skeletal remains of marble columns. Here we pause and listen, and perhaps we hear the whisper of chariot wheels on flagstone, the murmur of bartering merchants, the shout of a Roman mother calling her truant child, or the clash of steel on steel as two centurions settle some dispute with a sword duel. Alas, the shadows lengthen, and these spectral scenes fade as quickly as they came. Let us hurry on, lest we find ourselves trapped forever within the city's spectral embrace. In days of old, the Palatine Hill was the place to live, if you were anyone at all. Here the first kings of Rome supposedly made their homes, and here, too, Augustus established his court. So come now, and we'll visit the emperor's palace. If only its marble shell, marvel at the statuary, though the faces are all smashed and worn away. Peer into the shadowy rooms where imperial children played, shudder at the secret passages where courtiers plotted, conspired, and betrayed. What are these strange markings here? Are they too gruesome to show you? Never fear, for they are nothing more than the graffiti of ancient Rome, boys boasting of their athletic prowess, merchants hawking their wares, lovers carving their eternal devotion. Ah, but look here, a servant girl named Phyllis has scratched the name of her beloved into the plaster. And how movingly he returns the sentiment. Though in his art, he adds a little jest at Phyllis's expense. Do you hear them, dear traveler? Laughing and whispering, as they did 2,000 years ago. Listen closely, and you might hear more. The murmur of an empress giving orders, the squeak of a marble chariot rolling across mosaic floors, the twang of a lyre, as bards sing of Achilles and the rage of Achilles. Do you feel the vibrations through the soles of your feet? Yes, for the ghost of a dancer still leaps and twirls beneath our very feet. She wears a diaphanous gown, or so I think, for all that marble dust obscures her form. But alas, the ghostly revels must end, and she fades away as the music of Olympus fades into the dusk. So, with the night deepened, we make our way to the baths of now cold and cracked. These mighty baths were once the scene of much merriment. Their echoing halls rang with laughter, the slap of bare flesh on marble, and the boisterous conversation of men, eager to please their fickle emperor. And oh, to be young, and strong, and beautiful again. To mingle with the countless throngs of bathers who gambled and gossiped in these hallowed halls, to lie upon beds of warmed marble, scraping and scrubbing away the grime of travel and toil. How pleasant that must have been. But no such luxury awaits us tonight. Instead, we walk among the crumbling columns, tracing the lines of frescoed walls now faded and yet there are sounds, and you shall hear them if you stand perfectly still. Listen. Can you hear that? The clink of coins as patrons paid their fees. The splash of water as naked men dived into frigid pools. The squeak of sandals on marble. The slap of flesh as a matron chastised her spendthrift daughter. The hiss of a serpent darting between the colonnade. Yes, that's right. A serpent, a huge one with emerald eyes and scales of burnished gold. Beware its bite, dear and hold fast to my hand, for I'm afraid it hungers still, seeking fresh blood to drink. Ha! Fear not. for it is nothing but a dream. A nightmare, perhaps. And now the serpent slithers away as dawn creeps slowly up the eastern sky. As the sun rises, we climb the Capitoline Hill, the seat of Rome's ancient power, to visit the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the supreme god of the Roman pantheon, whose priests claim to foretell the future by reading the entrails of sacrificed animals. A grim business indeed. But you, dear traveler, need not fear any sacrifice tonight, unless, of course, you count the offering of sleep to Morpheus, the god of dreams. For we have reached the hour when shadows grow thin and the veil between worlds grows weak. So very soon, even the bravest and most skeptical of hearts might hear the whispers of restless spirits drifting on the breeze. If you would, you might reach out a trembling hand to touch the weathered marble columns, smooth and cool beneath your fingers, or the weather-beaten bronze doors emblazoned with scenes from the labors of Hercules, or the battered shield of a Roman soldier, scarred with the marks of many a battle. But whatever you do not look behind you. Do not. Whatever you do, turn back to this holy place, for the god of dreams claims those who linger too long in his sacred precinct. And now, the hour grows late, and I must bid you farewell. It has been my joy and honor to show you the wonders of ancient Rome, to guide you through the shadowed paths of the dead. And though our journey has taken us through darkness and danger, I trust that you have learned much and brought back precious memories. Treasure them well, I say, for memories are the only things that outlive us and make our brief lives worth living. So go now, and may the blessings of the gods go with you.